What is going on, Vikings fans? The Vikings are 9-2, and Sam Ekstrom and I, Luke Braun, are here to talk about it on the Locked On Vikings postcast, brought to you, of course, by Bet Online. Sam, I have to be honest, thanks to holiday travel and all that, I missed a good portion of this game. I was listening to it on the radio, but I missed the live eye. You were in the stadium, so I got to defer to you for a lot of this. Give me your major takeaway. There's a lot to talk about from this game, but give me your major takeaway here.
Well, I don't want to bury the lead. I want to know what radio broadcast you listened to. Was it the Westwood One? Was it national? Was it the local
Paul Allen,
feed?
Of course.
PA. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So you
Pete
definitely
Bursich,
got.
by the way, phenomenal color commentary. I want to shout out Pete Bursich. He's doing great over there.
Yeah. So you probably got a vibe for the excitement level of the game, and there was an interesting quote in the Kirk Cousins presser where he said David Blau, the practice squad quarterback, told Kirk there was the loudest stadium that he's ever heard in his career. Now, a lot of that career was spent in Detroit, so let's, clarify that.
The Lions, have they not been through enough today?
Oh, tough day to be a Lions fan. But I feel like that was probably the best crowd of the year and maybe one of the best games of the year in this building. Obviously, the Buffalo game, is the game of the year. But that was an up and down, back and forth roller coaster ride that I thought thoroughly entertained. For a Thursday game, that thoroughly entertained. Patriots in town, Justin Jefferson putting on a Randy Moss on Thanksgiving-like kind of show. I think that this is a huge bounce back for Minnesota in so many ways.
Oh, yeah.
Offensively, we'll talk about the defense, but the offensive bounce back, special teams was huge again, except for Joseph missing the kick. There's a lot to like about that, and now you get a mini bye to get some guys healthy, which is going to be a big storyline going forward of who's able to play, down the stretch here. But we can get into all of that. I thought it was a great crowd, great game. Loved being a part of it.
Yeah, many weeks ago, there was a point that I kind of meant to make, but ran out of time on the Locked On Vikings podcast about the crowd this year. It feels like crowd noise has had a really big impact on games, and that's a shout out to everybody who's gone to games. If you sitting there at home, if you have gone to a game this year, this one or any of them, and made a whole bunch of noise, you get to say "we" when talking about the Vikings for the rest of your life. You have contributed, because I think it has a real tangible impact. But let's talk about the players themselves. I mean, we got to talk about Kirk Cousins. I got back to the TV. I turned it on basically right before the Kene Wangu return touchdown, and so I watched the rest of that. And the second half, I mean, Cousins was dealing. But so was it the same in the first half? I know he had the one interception, but people are telling me that basically that was all game he was like that, because that was great.
Yeah, I thought this was maybe the best game of the season. Obviously, I think he was dealing late in the Buffalo game too, but he also had 2 picks in that game. So the stat line looks even a little better with just the 1 pick today, and it was a bad pick. But the Vikings' ability to move the ball after that interception, they scored on their next 5 drives, touchdown or field goal. And you probably saw a lot of those. But I felt like Cousins had a big throw to Hawkinson on a 3rd down after the interception. It was like a 3rd and medium where it was a trust throw. I mean, he just had to know that Hawkinson would be in his spot. He had to throw across the field. And he had to convert and move the chains and kind of stem the tide, make sure that the crowd didn't start booing, make sure it wasn't like, here we go again. He completed that pass, and from that point on, it was gunslinger Kirk. I mean, he was hitting all of his spots. He was aggressively getting it downfield to Jefferson. There were 2 absurd Jefferson catches in this game, and a couple others that were borderline absurd, but there were a couple downfield. The first one in the first half, the deepest throw that Kirk has completed this year, 45.3 air yards, and Jefferson receivers don't make that catch that are human, and Justin Jefferson made that catch, and then another one in the second half, crazy. So let me talk about Kirk for a second. Let me just kind of steal the show here.
Please do.
Kirk Cousins gave the best press conference of his Vikings career after this game, I think.
Nice. In the turtleneck.
in the black turtleneck. Yep, that Julie laid out for him, as he said.
Yeah, that is confirmed, right?
Yeah,
Julie
yeah.
picks those outfits. Yeah.
Yep, that's the routine in the Cousins household. Kirk was so relaxed and so loose, and I couldn't believe how transparent he was about breaking down play calls and stuff being said in his ear, talking about plays where he missed, talking about how he feels empowered by this coaching staff, that it brings him to tears, talking about Justin Jefferson's impact, talking about some kid on the Jumbotron who was wearing Kirk chains. He was giddy, and he was really being transparent and open and honest kind of about his own like shortcomings, but also like his confidence in the team. It was a great Kirk press conference. You get like a rare glimpse, I think, into just sort of the things that go through his mind. And that has to come from the confidence built by a game like that. So go watch the press conference, and I think Kirk deserves to pat himself on the back and enjoy a turkey leg after this one.
Yeah, I watched that presser too, and there was one thing in there that jumped out to me, and he was kind of talking from a perspective of like being humble and being hard on himself, be your own biggest critic. But he said he thought he hasn't played any better this year, and I have to respectfully, Kirk Cousins, I must disagree. I think he's been awesome, and this game is sort of the continuation of a trend that's been all year of Cousins being more willing to be creative, being more willing to try to, the way he says it is like find the inches, find the plays, being, a little bit less willing to take the easy yards and instead try to find the hard yards that keep you ahead of the chains. And that has been a huge difference for the offense. And I think the ability to, hit the spot, place the ball where you mean to, rifle something in, have the arm strength when you need to have it, have the touch when you need to have it. All that stuff has always been there. And it's just been about him, leveraging it as much as we want him to. And he has been this year. So, Kirk, if you're listening, don't be that hard on yourself. Or maybe do, I guess, if that's your process and it works. But how about the protection? Because it didn't seem like Kirk was under a lot of duress in the second half. But again, I missed a lot of that. We, of course, had Blake Brandel. He gave up the one sack. No Christian Darrisaw against a fearsome pass rush from New England. Was the protection, were my eyes lying, or was the protection really there the way that it seemed like it was, at least for the parts that I could see?
They gave Brandel so much help. I'm just confirming, one sack. And Brandel did give that up in a one-on-one situation. But they put tight ends and C.J. Ham a lot of times on his side of the field constantly. And they even had a lot of receivers in line, like a KJ Osborne, who would line up a couple feet off and help chip. So they came in with a very airtight plan to make sure that he was protected. Brian O'Neill held his own on the other side. Ingram allowed the pressure that led to the interception. Kirk Cousins had unsettled feet on that play, and he just sort of chucked it all arm, and he airmailed it over Osborne. That was an Ed Ingram mishap, which you might have missed that. So
I have not seen that interception. No, I just a lot of people told me it was bad. So
it was not a good interception, and then a lot of yak after it for New England. But honestly, the protection was great, but I also credit Kirk because he did have free runners in his face at a couple of times.
Seemed like he was moving around back there.
He just knew exactly where to go with the ball. Like, he always knew where his outlet was, whether it was Johnny Munt or Adam Thielen in the flat. He just he stared down a lot of arms like this and knew exactly where to go with it. So I credit him for his pocket awareness too. And there was another great throw in the first half where he stepped up and kind of bluffed to run and then threw it to Thielen instead for 15 yards. There was a really dumb play in the first half, I will say, where he tried to do the same thing, but he threw it behind Thielen and got Thielen hit, which could have been really bad. Could have been really bad.
Right, and that was the 15-yard penalty.
That was a 15-yard penalty, which they didn't take advantage of. But that was a bad Kirk play. One of a few tonight, but for the most part, really good.
Right. If you wanted to really pick out, you could find 3, but otherwise, great night. Well, we should flip around and talk about the defense. But first, real quick, recapping the week. The Vikings opened this week at BetOnline. at 3-point favorites, went out down to 2.5-point favorites, as I guess people slammed the Patriots line. I think they were overreacting to the Dallas game a little bit. I talked about that on Locked On too. Vikings cover that. They win by 7, but the over-under was 41.5. And that got crushed. What did we end up with? 59? Ooh, yeah. So if you had those calls in you and you didn't go to Bet Online and place a wager, you're missing out. Go to Bet Online. You can find all sorts of odds, news, and scores, betting on NFL games, but also NBA, NHL, World Cup stuff going on. Any sport all over the place. You can bet on tennis or whatever. You can even bet right in the middle of a game. So if the Vikings have a 2-score lead and you're feeling a little nervous and maybe you just want to say, I'm going to bet on these guys making a comeback. So if we get our hearts broken, at least I make a buck off of it. That's the kind of thing you can find at betonline.net, where the game starts. So the offense, and I mean, there's like not enough praise. We don't have enough praise to get to everybody. We've run out. There's too many people that deserve it. Defensively, kind of feels like the opposite. And again, like from what I saw, very little pressure on Mac Jones until the end, which we'll get to. But, coverage problems abound. Duke Shelley one-on-one with Devontae Parker. I have no idea how that's happening. It seemed like they were busting coverage. Sounds like Cam Bynum had a nightmare night. A lot of people had nightmare nights. Sounds like the linebackers had nightmare nights. And you let one of the worst offenses in football just put up 3 points against the Jets, plus a punt return touchdown. And they hung 26 on you at home. It feels like after the 40 burger from Dallas as well, I'm like pretty concerned about this defense. Like, what happened to them from the unit that like stifled Miami so well and stifled held up against the Buffalo Bills and all? Like, this unit was on a pretty good stretch. Washington and Arizona as well, and they just like have fallen apart here. I mean, Mac Jones is dicing you. What's going on?
Yeah, I think it starts with no pressure. Vikings come in bottom quarter of the league in blitz rate, and they brought nothing in this game. They were dropping in coverage, which against a suspect group of receivers, that is a surprising decision, especially when they lost Jacoby Myers early in the game.
They
did. I felt like some of it is just credit to New England. Mac Jones made some really great throws in the first half, some dimes. There were some sideline catches, contested catches, where you just do have to tip your hat to, Mac Jones, who is a professional quarterback, making some good plays. It was the short stuff. It was the stuff that bothered us early in the season about this defense, where stuff was wide open underneath. The middle of the field was undefended. Got tight ends running open on third down. Stuff that you thought that was left kind of pre-bye.
It felt like I was watching them against like the Eagles again.
Yeah, no, that's an astute point. So,
and someone in the chat says no Dalvin Tomlinson. Of course, that's a huge part of this.
Yeah, New England, was timely when it chose to run, and I felt like they honestly didn't run enough sometimes, but they were able to get some yardage on the ground.
That's a lot coming from you.
No giant splash plays on the ground though, but some nice. They had a 40-yard screen down the stretch. You probably saw that one. So yeah, I don't know what to think about this, like the impact of Dalvin Tomlinson. I have a hard time believing that his absence is causing, the meltdown of the last two games.
You can't be down 2 starters and explain all of it. Like, that has an impact, and Duke Shelley got beat by Devontae Parker. Like, that'll happen. But it doesn't explain everything. And there's been bad plays from like Eric Kendricks and Jordan Hicks, and apparently Harrison Smith went out in this game. Do we have an update on him?
Harrison Smith went out a couple times, went in the tent. He got rolled up on the touchdown early in the third quarter. I think it's probably ankle sprain, bruise, twist. I don't know the severity of it, but he was able to return. Sometimes those things don't flare up until after the game, so we'll see what his health is. But Za'Darius Smith, kind of limping off after the game. Adam Thielen banged up again, same deal. So this is going to be a massive mini bye. Like,
this 10 days kind of came at the perfect time.
Yeah, I think they're still a couple weeks away from getting Dantzler back, but they should have Tomlinson. They should have, Smith, Za'Darius, Thielen all getting some rest for the next week or so. And that'll build this team well because they really can't afford to have an undermanned defense. Like of all teams, they do need sort of all 11 guys because it felt like they didn't have a ton of weaknesses to expose personnel-wise, even when they were giving up a lot of those yards early in the season. And now they do. Now they do have some of those weaknesses on top of this questionable scheme, which is worrying going forward.
Yeah, I think they've got some soul searching to do. My best guess is that Donatel is trying to fold in an extra layer of complexity because it was so vanilla to start the season. And I think the idea is, all right, we'll start vanilla, we'll get the basics down, and we'll sort of fold things in as the season goes along. And I think something just isn't taking. So I don't know if you just have to practice that more, figure out what the problem with it is, or if you just have to back off and try your next thing. But I do want to talk about a couple of major moments in the game. If you listen to the Patriots, and particularly Matthew Judon or anybody in Patriots media, they're all talking about that Hunter Henry touchdown that got overturned, that looked like it was about a play in the goal line. My understanding of the rule and the way that they described it on the broadcast with Terry McCauley was that ball, if it hits the ground and then you lose control, like i.e. the ground knocked it out, then that is an incomplete pass even if you regain control. And that is what the call ended up being. But if you look at it, it's very debatable whether or not the ball actually touches the ground, or does it brush the ground and did that really knock it out or whatever. And that was an overturn of the call on the field, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know. I'm curious to get your take on that from in the press box.
Yeah, I thought this one was 50-50. This league has always been a stickler about the ball surviving the ground, whether it's
True.
the
Calvin Rule, all that stuff.
So Calvin Johnson, Des Bryant. I'm trying to think of the Pittsburgh tight end against the Patriots about 4 years ago. Jesse James.
Yeah.
This was the Jesse James play.
Okay.
Because it was a very subtle, movement of the ball, but it clearly did come loose momentarily. The hand was cradling it, right? And it almost looked like, it almost looked like the laces of the football were what grazed the ground, and it took like a telescope to zoom in enough and actually see that contact. I think letter of the law, it was correct. A little surprising maybe that they overturned the existing call on the field. Apparently, I just got a text about this. Apparently, Bill Belichick had a surly answer about it after the game. I'm excited to watch it because apparently our guy Chad Graff asked the question. So
Chad.
We'll see what that's about. But if I'm New England, I'm probably a little upset by that. And I thought maybe too they would put the ball inside the one. And just say, well, he regained control, but out of the end zone, so we'll put the ball at the half-yard line. Maybe that would have been a good compromise, but the Vikings caught a break there. But New England shot themselves in the foot so much in this game that
right, all the special teams things. I guess there's a couple things we're talking about to wrap things up with the defense. As bad as the day was, and giving up 26 to Mac Jones and whatever his passing stats were, have to look bad. Like giving up what they gave up to that Patriots offense is inexcusable, awful. A lot of things need to be answered. However, end of the game, you get a 3-and-out that gives with the Patriots have a chance to tie the game up with like 4-ish minutes to go, 3-and-out. And then they get the ball back with a minute to go and no timeouts. And what an incredible sequence. You have a sack Mac Jones back at the 2-yard line. And then an out pattern to Kendrick Bourne. And I think it was Patrick Peterson.
Yes.
Picks him up and keeps him in bounds. What a play to keep him in bounds. And that basically dooms it. They throw down the field, but it's caught over the middle, tackled in bounds, game over. What an incredible 3-play sequence. Especially considering how many times last year we saw they've got the ball with a chance to score and tie it or go ahead, a minute, no timeouts, 29 seconds, one timeout, you name it. They lost like all of those, all the stats about the end of halves and stuff. It's so refreshing to see the defense actually win one on a day when they were getting worked by a not very good team. They found it, and that's refreshing, I think. It doesn't make up for the whole day, but it does something.
Yeah, and Mac Jones turned back kind of into like a nice slice of pumpkin pie on Thanksgiving. He was looking
He pumpkin pied.
he was looking all world in the first 2.5 quarters, and then he did start to feel a little bit of pressure. Vikings finally got home a couple times. Critical third down sack on the penultimate drive for New England. But this is also a mark of Donatell's defenses, is that they do break, like they bend and break a lot early in some of these games. And then, the game wears on and they get a couple
They
of
find
stops.
it, they figure out what they're doing.
How many games this year have they given up between 22 and 26 points? Like a lot of them, the majority of them. That's kind of their sweet spot, is about 24. So the offense obviously has the onus to score more than that, and they have on most occasions. And, if you look at the offense, the last 3 of the last 4, is it? No, 3 of the last 5, like against Arizona, 34-26. Buffalo, 33-30. Today, 33-26. So the offense steadily,
They're scoring.
Scoring more in the 30s and able to win in these shootout games.
Right, and that's a complimentary thing. But speaking of complimentary football, we should probably just quickly acknowledge all of the special teams plays. Some of these are gaffes by New England, but the Kene Wangus touchdown, there was a couple of phenomenal plays. The Ryan Wright running into the punter, gaff by New England. But if that stood, if that Patriots player had missed, that would have been one of the punts of the year. That was an incredible punt. Gets wiped off the board because the Vikings keep the ball. It ends up being a touchdown. Obviously, we will take this, but it is a little sad.
I loved the sell job by Wright, followed by the celebration to say, yes.
Was he celebrating the flag or the punt? Because honestly,
flag, I think celebrating the fact that he got knocked over by a glancing blow to his foot. Yes, that's what he was celebrating. One
matters a lot more. But.
Yeah, C.J. Ham, I believe, had a critical block on the Wongwu kick return.
The broadcast called that holding. I don't really buy it. So you get a lot of jersey. He got a lot of jersey, but when your hands are inside the shoulders like that, like as long as your hands aren't outside your own frame, that will never, ever, ever get called. The broadcast made a big deal about that, and I do think letter of the law it is holding. But if you started calling that kind of thing holding, you'd probably get it every play on offense.
Right. Yeah, that's only under the microscope because it was a touchdown play, and I'm sure that happens on just about every kickoff return. So that was huge. The punt game flipped the field 3 times inside the 20 tonight. What is Marcus Jones doing catching the punt at the 1 on the final punt? That
when you won the game,
suspect.
I guess you get the chance to be a little greedy. When you won the game last week.
Yeah, that didn't make any sense to me. Punt coverage was great. Hey, I'm concerned about Greg Joseph though. I think this is problematic. It's
one of those unsustainable things where all his misses happen to be coming at like the lowest EPA moments, like extra points or longer ones, but like that typically doesn't tend to sustain. That will even out. But if you're good for 1 miss a game, like it's not going to keep being on the extra point. But I made all his field goals, I guess. So there's that. Yeah,
he's in his 3 years as the full-time kicker. He's bottom 3 in extra point percentage every year. That's super weird. Doesn't make sense. But all in all, I'll give a gold star to the special teams tonight.
Absolutely. And I have to correct myself. I think I said it was a 3-and-out, the second to last Patriots drive. They went all the way down and actually had a 4th and 16 and almost converted it to Kendrick Bourne. But the throw was a little bit off, I believe.
Aguilar. It was Aguilar.
Oh, it was Aguilar.
Who dove, and got hurt on the play. But that was dicey. That could have easily been a completion.
Could have definitely been a completion, and you're set up with 1st and goal to tie the game. But we'll talk about all of this a whole bunch more. We've got the Minnesota football party, of course, all week. We have you'll be able to hear Locked On Vikings sometime Friday, and I'll do a recap there as well. And you can, of course, find Sam Ekstrom, Superior Sports Talk, the Ron Johnson Show, the Minnesota football party, everything on Locked On Minnesota Sports. He's either on or touches in some way, and you can find me on the Locked On Vikings podcast. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. If it is not still Thanksgiving in Minnesota technically, but happy Thanksgiving, everybody.